In 1989, my girlfriend and her ex-girlfriend fell in love with a beautiful, dilapidated loft in Williamsburg. They started renovating it, and, with mixed feelings, I joined them.
You may think it's funny, but you're the people who are coming and ruining our neighborhood, and I'm recording it. So, welcome to the neighborhood. You're ruining it. Well, I won't, but I'm sure you will, because you're making all the money.
Should old acquaintance be forgot?
Should old acquaintance be forgot?
For the sake of old lang syne. For old lang syne. For old lang syne.
Poor old lang syne.
Gentrification has been a buzzword in Brooklyn neighborhoods for years now, but recently celebrity filmmaker Spike Lee turned the buzz into more of a roar when he spoke about the issue at Pratt Institute. So what's the real story? Who's winning? Who's losing?
And for many people, it may not be nearly that simple an equation. Here to share their viewpoints are Valery Jean, Executive Director of FUREE, Families United for Racial and Economic Equality. Welcome, Valery. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And Sue Friedrich is here, the Brooklyn-based filmmaker whose trailer we just saw, who is also a professor of visual arts at Princeton University. Thank you for being here, Valery. And Sue, let's talk about gentrification. You know, it's much more than just a buzzword. You know, Sue, we want to talk about your movie, but can we talk about how you first got involved with this issue?
By making the movie. Oh, well, actually by living in Williamsburg. Basically, we moved to an abandoned building. It had been abandoned for 20 years. We moved in 1989 because my partner and I and a third person all lived in tiny little tenement places before, and we're all artists and we needed space to work. So we moved into this abandoned building and fixed it up at our own expense, which is something we could talk about. But anyway,
Just
lots
a small
and lots
renovation
and lots of
project.
people
Yeah.
did that, yes.
Yeah.
And then 15 years later, I mean, we saw that things were changing and we were reading things, but nobody really knew that the rezoning was coming. So basically,
And then at a point in time, the rezoning happened. What year was it?
2005.
Under Mayor Bloomberg, right?
Under Mayor Bloomberg.
And I want to talk about that more. I mean, Valery, how does your organization play a part in all of this? Can you tell us that?
Sure. So we actually didn't learn about the rezoning plan that happened until about 2006 or so. So it was like a year later, the rezoning happened, and we were door knocking in Ingersoll houses in Fort Greene. Mm-hmm. And people weren't answering, so we're like, okay, we'll come back at a later time or so. And when we got back, you know, like one neighbor was like, well, they're no longer here. NYCHA moved them out under renovations. And so as any community organizing group, you just kind of like keep asking questions. So we went to the community, went to different stores, just started asking around, and then learned about the 2005 rezoning plan that also included downtown Brooklyn.
Can we talk about, like, how angry does that make you? I mean, gentrification has its own connotation surrounding it, but can we just talk about, you know, how that makes you feel, and also, like, will NYC continue to be such a great city if this gentrification, which is real, continues to happen and move people out of these neighborhoods? Sue?
I already think New York isn't what it has been. I mean, I've lived here for 35 years, and it's not the same New York. And but in a way, one of the things is about language, and gentrification is a word that we all use, and it comes from the idea of the gentry, the landed white gentry, sort of moving in wherever. But this is really about city planning, and it's about developers. And yes, there are very wealthy people buying into neighborhoods and changing the structure of the neighborhood. But so much of this was set in place so long ago. I mean, back in the 70s by, you know, Felix Rohatyn, and it's a long-term plan, and it's not just about individuals moving into different housing.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about city planning and people can start to feel a little apathetic when they feel like they don't have any power, so what does FUREE do to on-ground efforts for people to feel like they can take their FUREE and take action?
So we are a member-led organization. So everything for us is about like what does the community feel, like what do people want to organize around, and so on. And so when we looked at the issue of rezoning in downtown Brooklyn, we looked at the issue of like, where can we make sure that we're keeping the social and the cultural fabric of downtown Brooklyn intact. We want to make sure that, the families who've been here for decades are able to, to have a voice. So we have leadership development classes or workshops where people learn about, how to organize, how to run a campaign, how to do public speaking, which doesn't come naturally for everyone.
Right.
But then also like, connecting that to like what has been like the periods of like racial, gender, and economic injustice, not just in New York, not just in Brooklyn, but just globally.
Yeah.
And so for us, it's really more about making sure that we have as many community, low-income, working-class communities of color know how to navigate policy, how to navigate different hearings, what are the different city governments that you need to get in contact with, and then teach them how to fight for what it is that they want.
Yeah, that's an excellent organization, and we want to talk about how people can get in touch with it. That might be viewers. Sue, I could talk to you both all day. Sue, can we talk about your film, and we talk about the relationship you had with Williamsburg when you first moved here years ago, and the one that you have today after your film has been made?
The one I have now is every time I go there, I'm completely freaked out by how strange it is. I mean, not only architecturally, these endless streets of really hideous buildings, which, by the way, none of which were built with any LEED certification. None of them are environmentally sound. And in this day and age, with the money they spent, at least they could have done that, right?
Yeah, we're going to look at a clip right here of you marking up a map.
Oh, yeah.
And not to interrupt you, but we can watch this, right?
We had 3 years left on our lease, but I was beginning to wonder, was I a dinosaur looking at the first snowflake? In order to ignore that thought, I began to record every demolition and development in Williamsburg west of the Expressway, an area only 6 blocks wide by 15 blocks long. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
Wow, please continue your thought. That's amazing.
Luxury is the term they just use so randomly now, but it's very weird in Williamsburg now because it's so homogenous. It's like everybody is more or less white and under the age of 31. And I have lived in New York for 35 years, and I feel like almost every neighborhood in New York I think of as pretty diverse. Maybe the Upper East Side wasn't so diverse, but pretty much everywhere else you felt that there was some mixture of people, both economic, racial, you name it. And Williamsburg is like being on a college campus, and I just don't think that that's what New York is about, and I don't understand actually wanting to live there with it being so homogenous.
But has FUREE taken inventory, and do you know if that sort of feeling is true, is that Williamsburg is very homogenous and maybe the Upper East Side, but everything else is diverse? What's you guys'?
I mean, we organize primarily in Fort Greene, Bedford-Stuyvesant, some parts of Crown Heights, and so on. And so we understand like the whole feeling of being pushed out of somewhere that you helped to build. For us, it's also looking at how are existing community residents being engaged in a process of community development, right? A new building may come up and it may happen in a community board meeting that many people don't attend and so on. So how do you get people who actually live there to say, hey, wait a minute, we're not feeling this right now?
Yeah, and speaking of that, we have this clip. This is one of your protests. Is that true?
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
yeah, let's take a look.
Yeah.
what he's really doing is taking small businesses out and he's building luxury houses. Up with the people! Yeah, yeah!
That was one of your protests. It was on Willoughby Street in
Yes.
2011.
Yes.
How can people get in touch with your organization?
Sure. So FUREE is located at 388 Atlantic Avenue on the second floor, and our phone number is 718-852-2960. You can also check out our website at www.furee.org.
That's great. I could talk to you guys all day. I mean, what's going to happen with gentrification? I mean, there's only so much space in the 5 boroughs.
Right.
What's going to happen 20 years from now when people are pushed out of stuff?
Well, I mean, but we have to ask the question, though. I have to butt in here and say that you know, the thing is that there were people before we moved to New York who were here. I mean, and you have a special case in that it was, you know, a loft that was not being occupied and it was maybe industrial. But so how do we balance that? Because people want to move to New York. They want to move to New York because of the arts, the culture, et cetera. And they got to move somewhere. So,
But to interrupt,
yeah, please do.
First of all, they want to move here because of the arts, but if New York City's policies, under Bloomberg and Amanda Burden, city planner, keep pushing artists out along with all the other, you know, economically challenged groups in the city, there isn't going to be a culture here that people are going to come to. But also there was a piece in the Times 2 weeks ago about the fact that in Manhattan, 40% of the new condos and townhouses were owned by Russians. And then you can say what percentage are owned by the wealthy Chinese and the wealthy Belgians. And so a lot of housing in New York now is being bought by outside investors who are flipping it or opening it up for Airbnb or whatever. And so there would be a lot more housing for people who actually live here if that kind of stuff wasn't allowed. And that has to do also with the tax laws and all the laws that were put in place by the city government that allows that kind of stuff to happen. And that's the kind of stuff that needs to change.
So what are you working on right now? Can people get in touch with you? What are you involved in with?
And how can people see the film?
The people can see the film by getting it through my distributor, who's Outcast Films. So it's very easy to find, outcastfilms.com. I've made a lot of films, and they're all available through Outcast. And right now I'm working on teaching. I teach in the spring, and
At
it
Princeton.
takes most of my time. And so I will start a new project in the summer. But yeah.
Okay, Outcast.
That's so great. What's going to happen? Are we going to have to move to like Woodstock, New York, and start a new artist utopia there?
I don't want to move out of New York. I love New York.
Yes, I know. I love Brooklyn. You know, we were talking. I live in Park Slope. Jamie lives thereabouts, if I may say. Windsor Terrace.
Totally different neighborhood. He's trying to make it. I don't love in Park Slope.
You know, it really is something. You know, gentrification, and you know, I know that FUREE is helping people with this, and you know, thank you, first of all.
Thank you.
What should people do that are viewing? Can you just tell them once again how they can get involved with FUREE?
Sure, you can get involved by contacting us at 718-852-2960. Our offices are located at 388 Atlantic Avenue. We're in the second floor, right there. You can also check out our website at FUREE, FUREE.org.
Okay, all right.
We're gonna have to have you guys back. Sue, would you come back to talk about this at some point? Because there's so much more to talk about in terms of gentrification, in terms of like the city as a whole. So, you know, thank you guys. This is great.
Very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.